To solve its ridiculously high housing prices, California is actually willing to revolutionize itself. This environmental law that has strangled California for 50 years has been officially repealed. Speaking of this environmental law, it's also been jokingly called the Housing Blockade Act by Californians. Some people are commenting that with the environmental law repealed, homeowners will finally turn their fortunes around. But others are joking, dream on, just switch houses and continue being housing slaves. But regardless, don't you find it strange? What exactly happened yesterday that this environmental law could be repealed just like that? What profound impact will this have on California's owner-occupied housing and out-of-state investment? Before we start, please give this video a thumbs up. Your likes are my biggest motivation for continuing to update and share content. If we're talking about the most controversial state in all of America, it's probably California. It offers sunshine, comfort, and technological innovation, but at the same time, its housing prices are the most insane. Among America's 10 most unaffordable housing cities, California accounts for 9 cities. California has a housing shortage of 3.5 million units, but each year they can build at most only 100,000 new residential units. To solve California's housing problem, we'd need to wait at least another 30 plus years. The California government has its talking points too. California has little land and building houses is difficult. Sounds very reasonable, right? But the key is it's not that they truly have no land. California has land, but they won't let you build houses on it. Why? This is the famous California Environmental Quality Act. The CEQA problem, how environmental protection became housing blockade. California passed this strange CEQA environmental law in 1970. Originally, the intention was to protect the environment, make California better and more livable, so everyone would love living there. So how did it become the despised Housing Blockade Act by Californians? The problem is that anyone can use it to sue. That's right, even your neighbors can. For example, if you see a developer across the street that you don't like, you can use this environmental law to say they're destroying original topography, don't fit community character, or might even affect local bird migration routes. So in California, the more a city needs housing, the less housing you can build. Lots of land you can't touch, land available for residential use, can only become less and less. The houses built are far from enough. So you see, this kind of legislation really demands respect. The environment might not be better, but ordinary people's housing situation is definitely more difficult. What's even more ironic is that if it weren't for the big fire in Los Angeles at the beginning of the year, we might have really thought environmental laws were truly environmental. The LA fire wake-up call. Last week, a Southern California person came to me for real estate consulting. After seeing my on-site disaster footage sharing from the LA fire episode, he asked a particularly dark question. So many people in the LA fire became homeless, which is certainly heartbreaking. But everything has two sides. Although the fire destroyed so many people's homes, might it conversely push California to learn from this painful experience and thoroughly solve this housing problem? This dark logic he mentioned is quite subtle. Why? I shared with him a record of my old house renovation. During the LA fire period, the project manager and I had to endure waiting for engineering approvals. That kind of torture. You have to wait for approvals involving environmental assessments. Think about it. The LA fire burned over 10,000 houses. How many birds do you need to assess? How many sets of blueprints do you need to review? How long do you need to stop work? Just one house nearly drove me crazy. So many people, tens of thousands of blueprints, and still in a fire disaster area. How torturous is that? So the LA fire showed us California's two faces. First, it doesn't allow tree cutting, lacks fire breaks, so when fire starts, it spreads in sheets. You can't even wait. This is the harm of environmental law. After burning, you need to rebuild, but various environmental assessments drag it out, so you can't even build houses. So the LA fire awakened many California residents. The more environmental protection, the more fires. The more fires, the more pollution. The more pollution, the more you can't repeal environmental law. What kind of messed up logic is this? Because ultimately, we live in the environment. We're people utilizing the environment and various resources. Of course, we should reduce pollution and care for the environment, Mother Nature. But if because of assessing dozens of trees that can't be cut, causing fires that burn tens of thousands of acres of forest, even burning into communities and destroying cities, seeing such devastation in reports, then perhaps this environmental law, forget waiting 10 years, maybe you wait 20 years, wait 50 years. The results are all unknown. Nobody pays attention to you at all. But if you think this is enough to make California mend its ways, you're too naive. Because repealing legislation isn't a matter of a snap decision. What could really make California make up its mind in such a short time wasn't Californians. It was New Yorkers. The New York effect, fear of revolution. Yes, it's what we discussed last week, New York's mayoral election. The candidate promised that once elected, he'd freeze New York rent. California witnessed firsthand what happened to its good brother New York. If you can't reform yourself, then wait for the upcoming revolution. Many transformative eruptions actually don't rely on external forces. They're internal and natural. It's the people themselves igniting their hearts. They need change. Because only those who've internally truly experienced these hardships can feel it. They really can't take it anymore. They don't need external pushing. Internally, there's someone like New York's young guy in his 30s taking the lead. The masses respond in droves rent freeze. It scared Wall Street because planned economy plans to control not housing prices. What it really wants to control is New York's capital. For those interested in New York, you can check out last week's New York special topic. Back to California. New York's mayoral election was unimaginable news for California. Not only did New York shock, California was shocked too. Because New York is the world's financial center. A financial center having a mayor advocating planned economy with such popular support shows how surging public opinion is. California isn't far behind either. So even though California previously saw the LA fire burn so terribly with homeless people running everywhere, the California government didn't make any big moves. But seeing last week's New York mayoral candidate upset, in just 1 week California government acted with lightning speed to repeal the environmental law at the fastest speed, the so-called California Housing Control Act. What is this? It's signaling to California voters, I was wrong, I know I was wrong. I'm taking a stance now. I can handle California's real estate reform well. We can build more new houses. We absolutely won't add more housing troubles for voters. Not delaying a single day, just do it. This attitude's decisiveness, you see, New York helped California. Actually, think about it. The LA fire and New York's mayor have equally profound impacts. First, a group of people sacrificed their own interests to demonstrate reform possibilities. The California governor isn't stupid either. He can understand this logic. Their previous excuses about California legislation being hard to change, environment being very important to California people, all changed overnight. So everyone needs to understand, governing California isn't easy. Basically, many excuses and pretexts. The key is still fearing voters abandoning them. New York really helped California big time. The candidate New York mayor winning, freezing rent. California can't afford to lose. The new question, is California's approach truly wiser? So the new question is, California repealed this environmental law. That's positive. But can it really be wiser than New York's rent-freezing approach? Will ordinary California homebuyers really be the first to benefit? New York's mayor chose rent freezing and price increase restrictions. California chose repealing environmental law, encouraging more house building, hurry up and build. This isn't because New York doesn't want to build more houses, but as we discussed about New England region old cities, old core areas, how much empty land can you squeeze out of downtown areas? So New York's candidate mayor isn't stupid either. Getting votes is their priority. They need to win elections first. How they later deal with Wall Street, how they deal with builders, that's later business. California is different. It has land development potential. If they really dig hard, repeal that environmental law, building houses is much simpler than New York. So California chose another path, not rent freezing, but letting the market freely regulate. Government manages as little as possible, preferably not at all. Look, This is very smart. It won't scare away capital. Who really benefits first? So you think California's strategy seems perfect. Be careful not to celebrate too early. The earliest beneficiaries might really not be ordinary California people, because development logic isn't controlled by government. It's builders. Builders getting policy signals. Rest assured, builders are much more sensitive than us. Getting these policy directions, this encouragement, government releasing land, encouraging development and house building, there's a certain time lag. Time lag will attract massive investment clients, even property speculation institutions. Note I'm talking about speculation institutions, not individual investment like buying one or two houses. That's not institutional speculation. Buying hundreds and hundreds of units, they're just that wealthy. Remember New York? If they freeze rent, where do these speculative property institutions make money? It might really be like Wall Street worries. These people move out of New York. So some friends say this isn't necessarily bad using planned economy to exclude capital investment. Those with capital and assets stop playing. But people with money can't let money sit idle. They flow to places with relatively favorable policies. California. Look, the policy is good. Remember the three core principles of real estate analysis. 1. Long term. Look at population. 2. Medium term. Look at policy. 3. Short term. Look at interest rates. This time it's policy. New York's mayor's policy isn't very favorable. California's policy is very favorable, repealing environmental law. You couldn't imagine this before. The first to rush in might be those holding money, these New York institutions. California's result might be housing supply does increase, but housing prices don't change much, might even keep rising. Why? 1. Labor costs, material costs won't decrease short term. Thinking house building will be cheap is almost dreaming. It'll only get more expensive. 2. Inflation factors. 3. Interest rate effects, very important. Having land and houses, but if interest rates don't drop, most people still need to look at interest rates for mortgage buying. If monthly payment costs are too much pressure, it's still hard to buy. And they're competing with possibly New York capital coming over, institutions directly throwing cash, individual buyers, even all-cash California buyers competing with all-cash. Can ordinary California people outcompete them? So comparing California and New York on the surface protects bottom-tier people, but it's driving away capital, excluding capital. You all leave. Don't stay in New York. Capital will flow. California on the surface can provide more land to solve housing, but housing supply costs won't decrease. If you want a house, pressure is still very high. Interest rate burden is very high. After buying, maintaining it might still be just as difficult. Any policy has certain lag effects. Repealing the bill yesterday can't have immediate effects this morning. So everyone needs patience going forward. Let's analyze and observe New York, capital flow directions, California, builder new moves, construction volume. These two parts are more sensitive market experts than ordinary people. When you, as an ordinary person, have no direction, find capital to reference their judgments. Category 1. Near-term owner-occupant buyers. If you want to buy houses in the second half of this year or next year, essential housing, owner-occupied housing, family needs. Note, you're an owner-occupant family needs come first. In the next 6 to 12 months, you might still see massive builder advertising, development promotions, buy-down upgrades, discounts. None of this matters. None of this matters. You need to focus on owner-occupied housing. Are you satisfied location? Is the floor plan reasonable? Can school districts satisfy children's education? Calculate your housing maintenance costs properly. You don't need to care about these laws. They don't affect your next 6 months because there's lag. I think if it's new land use, continuing to expand outward to city periphery, buyers can only get one price advantage, moving farther and farther from downtown to suburbs. Find a suitable distance balance. Don't make commuting too troublesome. Housing prices still rely on geographical location to find price differences. Farther is cheaper. Don't think too much about whether environmental law repeal can immediately drop housing prices significantly. That's unrealistic because development still needs several years of cycles. Your family needs might not catch up. No need to wait bitterly. If good school districts are gone, that might really be very troublesome. Good locations, you hold them, your house purchase won't lose. Category 2, long-term upgrade buyers. For friends wanting to wait for environmental law effects, waiting for new house construction. Note, this is also several years later. Friends wanting to upgrade houses should focus on observing next year new construction starts in your local area. This year is almost over. After next spring, land approval will be simplified. Builders will have new development projects to launch. Policies are out. They need to follow policies. You can see these investment institutions, property speculation groups, builder new developments, observe quantities. How do they respond to environmental law repeal? Are they actively launching? If everything favors them, you'll find project landing speed in your local area will be very fast. No more miscellaneous environmental assessments stumbling around. No environment blocking you. Very likely, past downtown projects in California that couldn't launch, those inner city projects you saw surrounded by fences and iron barriers with grass grown man-high inside with nobody working. If they're really optimistic about policies, they'll gradually do site clearing, surrounding road improvements, widening, reconstruction, preparing for next phase development entry. In many northern and southern California city downtowns, you can see such land enclosures. Even around schools, there's such land waiting for favorable policies to start construction. Short-term won't see effects. Long-term house upgrading, pay attention to construction volumes. Same old saying, houses have no bottom buying, houses rely on screening. Look at California's so many cities. Which climate, economic development do you think is more suitable? You're definitely not looking at which California houses are cheap to buy. So don't be confused by some California builders repeatedly hyping housing prices. Not for cheap housing prices, because no matter how many new houses, quality school districts haven't increased. Quality resources are always scarce. Above is my understanding of environmental law repeal. Actually, its policy significance is extraordinary because, after all, California took this step never before. They also had no choice but to change. Otherwise, there'd really be real estate revolution. So next we need to see how localities cooperate in the entire construction process. Land use restrictions must be relaxed. Community management rules can't be rigid anymore. Construction review efficiency must improve. Add more personnel. Can't let me wait months there. Overall, improve efficiency. Only then can California's housing get fundamental relief. So my evaluation is, the road ahead is long and arduous, but the future is promising. Welcome friends to share your views on New York, California's recent various bills, or housing issues in various states. Thank you for your likes and subscriptions. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next exciting share.